Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. It's good to see everybody. Hope you all are doing well. Actually, I think this is the first show of the year, the first weekly show of the year at the very least. I hope everyone's doing well. It is good to see everybody. Okay, so for some reason, the coloration on my... There we go. All right, yeah, the color, the LUT that I'm using looks kind of weird. That's interesting. Doesn't usually look that bad. Coloration's kind of looking horrible here. Give me a quick second here. Let me mess around with the filters here real quick. Get rid of the LUT. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Let's just deal with this. Let's bring that down a little bit. Bring that down a little bit. And, ooh, that's way too far down. And so you need like dials. Dials are so much easier to deal with than this stuff. There we go. That looks better. That looks better. Thank you. Thank you, love. So yeah, good morning. Welcome. Like I said, I do think that this is the checking the calendar right now. I'm pretty sure that this is the yeah, this would be the first weekly show of the year, because we did a show on Sunday on the 4th, so that was the first show of the year. This is the first weekly show of the year. I kind of took the New Year season off for weekly shows. It's good to be back. Good to see everybody. I do apologize for the late start here. Just kind of getting everything set up and whatnot. So this morning, what we're going to be talking about, what we got going, we're going to be talking about the childishness in the community. Oh boy. But before we do that, the daily read. Yeah, let's do that, because I think the daily read will actually be rather fitting for what it is that we're going to be talking about. And what we're going to be using is we're going to be using the shadow work oracle for this. Like I said, these are daily, not weekly, right? So the idea of these reads is that each day we do it. This is the energy for the day, right? So something to just be mindful of as we're going through the day, right? Things that we need to look at about ourselves, what we need to do to, get the most out of our day. And with it being a new year, I think we definitely want to know where that energy is at, right? So, there we go. Oh, wow. All right. All right. Interesting. So the first card that we got here is hypersensitive. I think that's kind of that's kind of fitting, isn't it? With the topic that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, overinterpretation, wounded ego, and fragile boundaries. Yeah. So again, kind of like this, when you're critiqued, when you are, judged by others, don't take it too personally. Don't allow other people to dictate whether or not you feel like you know what it is that you're doing. Yeah. Don't allow other people to kind of like come into your space, come into your mind space, your mental space, and cause you to make mistakes that you normally wouldn't make because you're doubting yourself, because, of being a little too sensitive to other people's opinions. And then, ties into that, fear of success, right? If it decides to focus, there we go. Fear of success, visibility, pressure, fear of expansion. Here, it's not even necessarily just kind of like the fear of success, but more like, I would say, kind of like looking at the previous card, the hypersensitive, is to say fear of whether or not you fully believe that you have what it takes, you know, to succeed, right? It's almost like imposter syndrome, right? The visibility, like, so if people are able to see you, like, are people, you know, going to say that you don't know what it is that you're doing? You know, the pressure of being able to, you know, act in a way accordingly to, like, you know, am I doing this the way that I'm supposed to be doing it? Do I truly know what it is that I'm doing? And then the fear of expansion, because fear of expansion is fear of failure, right? If you're sensitive to the thoughts and ideas of others and those people's opinions of you or what it is that you're doing, you are going to inherently be afraid of being visible. You're going to have pressure to do better. And you're going to be afraid of expanding. You're going to be afraid of kind of tripping over your own feet, so to speak, right? Of getting bigger, getting more direction, right? More opportunity in what it is that you're doing. And so what I'm seeing here, for at least for these first two cards, is what we're looking at is, you know, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, right? And the last card, parental control, right? Overpowering authority, conditional approval, and rebellion freeze. And these are, parental control is the concept. It's not actual parental control. We're not talking about your parents, right? I mean, maybe for some of you, perhaps it is. But, you know, overpowering authority, this feeling of you feel that somebody's above you or somebody does this better than you. And, you know, there's a certain, I guess, gatekeeping aspect to that individual or what that person, you know, says you can or can't do or what you're actually capable of doing. And the conditional approval, something that we, you know, deal with greatly, right? Especially in this sequence, is that it's that constant seeking for approval and only getting it under very specific conditions and the stress of wanting to meet those conditions. So again, I think the biggest overall thing that I'm seeing for today, guys, is fuck other people and fuck what they think. Like, legitimately, like, don't let people, you know, piss in your Cheerios, so to speak, you know? Excuse me. So I think that's a very appropriate read for today's topic, right? So the reason for today's topic is I'm going to be completely honest. I'm kind of up to here with people acting like, you know, we're still in high school. I really am. I'm not going to talk about any specific situations because it's honestly like, is there a specific situation? I suppose maybe. But is it worth my time to discuss it in detail? No, not really. It's a waste of energy. But it is a symptom of a larger, more overarching issue that I'm noticing in any community, not just the occult community, but because this is the occult community, this is the community that I'm going to be speaking about in specific. And the fact that as a member of this community, you know, I am absolutely, unequivocally fed up with just nicotine, Mr. Something Else. I'm absolutely just, I'm just fed up with it. I'm fed up with the childish behavior. I'm fed up with, you know, the cliques, people, you know, calling out, like, you know, who they're friends with, who they're not friends with, you know, or just acting immature overall. Like, people really don't have anything better to do with their fucking time. It's sad. It's ridiculous. It's irritating, I suppose. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So a lot of people will generally find or interpret disagreement as invalidation of identity. So when somebody disagrees with someone about something, right, or someone comes across and comes out and disagrees with a particular point or opinion that is rather polarizing, those that think the contrary sometimes take the position of feeling as if their identity is being attacked or invalidated, right? And what that does is that will trigger a fight or flight response, right? So and it's not a reasoned response, right? It's an immediate emotional response. And, you know, I've always said, and I will always maintain, if I say something you don't like and you're offended, that is your fucking problem, not mine. That's not my issue. I am not responsible for your feelings. If you don't like what I have to say, then you don't have to fucking watch me. Like, kick rocks. I don't give a shit. I really don't, right? I'm not worried. I'm not scared of somebody being offended by me. I never have been. I never will be, okay? And if I'm offended by something that you say, guess what? That's my problem, not yours. It's a two-way street, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you need to think a certain way because I think a certain way, because that's not how the world works. If I don't like your shit, guess what? I'm not going to watch your shit. Stop acting like a bunch of fucking kids, because that's exactly what you're doing. At least when you get into what we're talking about here, right? Like these unmitigated responses, like the inability to control emotional response, the inability to regulate emotionally. You know, it's childish. It's truly childish. And it's pathetic. It's disgusting. And at the same time, absolutely fucking hilarious. So the psychological distinction between critique and attack, right? In person, I shut that shit down. Online, exactly. No, I mean, you know, I get it, you know? And so the psychological distinction between critique and attack, right? So there is a fine line between critique and attack, right? A generalized statement usually is critique, right? Critique, a lot of people like to inherently believe or think that critique is constructive. There is a reason why there's a thing called constructive criticism, because criticism in and of itself, or critique, isn't always constructive. It isn't always positive. Okay? So there's a reason why there is an actual distinction between criticism and constructive criticism. Okay? And critique and attack is kind of like what we're looking at, right? So within criticism, people can take criticism, just blatant, blunt, direct criticism, as an attack. And again, that has to deal with how the individual receives that message, receives that information, and how they interpret it. And so what happens is we end up in a situation where if you interpret something a certain way, does it make it that? And the answer simply is no. Just because you interpret something some way doesn't make it that way, right? Because if that was the case, then I think more marriages would probably actually fail, right? Because of the amount of times that, you know, when you have a conversation with your partner and something can be misinterpreted, if inherently what you believed or interpreted something as was truth, then what's the point of discussion, right? So there is a definite difference between critique and attack, and it can be a fine line. It really can, especially if the critique or the criticism isn't a constructive criticism. And let's face it, I'm usually not very well known for constructive criticism. I have my opinion, I give my opinion, and fuck everybody else. I have always been that way. I will always be that way. And the fact that, there are people out there, that, like, for some reason have nothing better to do in their lives except for to shit their pants about my opinions is just adorable. Really, it really fucking is. And now ego fusion, right? So ego fusion with belief systems creates fragility. That is what creates fragility in this. Okay. So when you attach your ego to a belief system, like any belief system, whether it's Christian, it's monotheistic, it's polytheistic, it's left-hand path, right-hand path, whatever the case may be. If you attach or fuse your ego to your beliefs, you are inevitably going to be a fragile individual. You are inevitably going to be very easily upset by the ideas and opinions of others. Okay. And the ever evolving and changing landscape of those belief systems. I mean, if you think about it, using Christianity as an example, if you look at the Protestants and the Catholics and, all of that, there's a lot of infighting between them, right? Like all the different, the gentleman occultist, we had him on Sunday, actually mentioned the number of how many different subsects of Christianity there were. And I didn't even realize that there are that many subsects of Christianity. It's fucking ridiculous. And there's usually infighting, between all of them, right? So, it's because these people attach their egos to their beliefs, right? To their God. And when something or anything comes in and disagrees even slightly with that, it causes that fragile reaction, that breakdown. Yeah. And Jung warned about identification with archetypes instead of integration. Okay, so everything that I'm talking about right now is outlined by Carl Jung. Okay, so in Jungian psychology, there is a blatant warning about this, about creating self-identification with or through archetypes. And we need to make sure that their little soft shells of an ego doesn't get hurt as we are accountable for it, right? Exactly. Because apparently it's our fault. It's apparently because when you piss somebody off, right? It's, you say something and it pisses somebody off. It's like, bruh, I wasn't talking about you, right? Like, I wasn't like, but if the shoe fits, go ahead, Cinderella. Put on that glass slipper. So Jung warned about like self-identification through archetypes instead of integration, right? So we create an archetype and then we identify through that archetype instead of, integrating it into, the self and having it as an aspect of self instead of trying to make it the entirety of self. And then this is what it's talking about, like when we talk about, integration and we talk about identification. So it's okay to have something that is an aspect of self and have that as a part or a piece of identity. But it cannot be the whole of your identity. So am I an occultist? Yes, I'm an occultist. Is that the entirety of my identity? Fuck no. Like being an occultist is a very, you know, I don't want to say small, but relatively speaking, it is, right? There's so much more that I do in my life that honestly, though occultism, being an occultist, being on the left-hand path is something very important to me, you know, and there is a focal point because of the shows and because of the YouTube channel and because, you know, all of this stuff. It isn't everything, right? It doesn't even come close to being even like a quarter of who I am, right? Comparatively speaking to everything else that comprises me as an individual. And again, that falls down to that idea is that I am, right? Like when people ask, well, who are you? I am. I am who I am, right? Because it is ever evolving, it is ever changing, you know, it's ever growing. And, you know, it's one of those things that if you take something, a part of yourself, it doesn't even have to be like spiritual, but think about like music elitists, like metalhead elitists, right? Like, you know, when you identify yourself almost 100% as like a, you know, a metalhead, you know, it kind of leaves something to be desired for personality, doesn't it? Right? Or anyone that identifies almost their entire personality based on music, right? The genre of music that they listen to, or you know, the type of movies that they like, right? Like, you know, if it's horror movies, like horror movies, see this a lot in horror movies, right? That, you know, a lot of people, you know, have this obsessive behavior with horror movies. I love horror movies. Is it part of my personality? No. Right? You know, but it's definitely something that, you know, I'm into. Would I go out and buy statues of characters from horror movies? I mean, I used to. I used to have like a 3-foot statue of fucking Pinhead that would talk when you walk past it, right? Got it from Spencer's years ago. Been forever since I've had that fucking thing. But, you know, it was, you know, I had one. Would I do it to buy one again? Probably not. Probably not. Do I like the aesthetic? Yeah, I do. You know, again, that's another thing. Aesthetic, the way that I look, the way that I dress. Is that part of who I am? Yeah, it's definitely part of who I am. Right. And for me, this isn't edgy. Like, this isn't edgelord. I'm not dressing edgy. I'm dressing this way because I enjoy the shit. Right. I enjoy the clothing I've enjoyed the gothic aesthetic, at least like kind of like the casual skater goth aesthetic since I was 14. I'm 39 years old right now. I'll be 40 in 6 months. Right. Like, it's, you know, it's fucking clothes, man. Like, right. But again, does it comprise everything about me? No, it doesn't. Right. Can I wear a suit? Yeah, I can. And I think it looked pretty goddamn good in one too, you know, but, you know, kind of is what it is, but it's not the entirety of who I am. Right. So identification with archetypes instead of integration. Integrate each individual aspect of who you are. Right. I like horror movies, but I also like rom-coms. Right. You know, am I an occultist? Yes, I'm an occultist. Is that everything I am? No, it's not. Integration. You as an individual, there needs to be an understanding that there are many different facets and parts of who we are as people. And if we don't integrate and we use it as an archetype for identification, that is where we become vulnerable to attack. Right? And if you're wondering, like, where to kind of pull this stuff out of, Jung, the undiscovered self, right? So ego inflation and projection. And even here we're talking Aristotle, right? So we're looking at the ethics of the virtue as moderation and resistant, right? So if disagreement destabilizes you, the work isn't deep enough, at least not yet, right? If disagreeing with someone of a differing opinion makes you feel unstable, makes you feel like you need to react, to be reactive, there's something that needs to be done there, because that's not a reasonable response to a situation. It simply isn't, right? Now, emotional regression masquerading as power. Insults, threats, and dominance displays are regression, not authority. And then this needs to be like made 100% clear, right? When we get into situations where the conversation is no longer a conversation, it's insulting someone's character or attempting to, like character assassination, threats are being made, right? People are like, you start, saying that you're going to do things to people, or trying to posture and display some level of dominance. That's regression. That's not authority. That's not actual authority in something, right? That is weakness on display for everybody. That's what that is, right? Volume replaces substance when confidence collapses, right? So people get loud, people get boisterous, and completely ignore anything of actual substance in a conversation. That's when their confidence, you can tell that their confidence is just hit the floor. And my responses to people depend on how people come at me, right? So when somebody asks me a question, or comes at me with something, so if someone comes at me in certain ways, with the dictation off the bat that I'm right, you're wrong, right? And you're this, I'm that, right? Or you're not allowed to have an opinion, right? Then yeah, my response is going to be, kind of on equal footing, right? Now, if somebody just asks me a direct question for clarification, then you will get clarification. If you request clarification, you will receive clarification. But I am not going to waste my time trying to clarify something to someone that has already made their mind up. It's that simple. It's that simple. So there are some people that I've seen, and this isn't just to me, but this is, in many spaces, that look at different responses to different people as meaning something different, right? And it doesn't. It doesn't mean something different. It just, how did you come at me, right? So that's pretty much it. And so when people come at me and they come at me louder and without actual substance in what they're coming at me with, then, or if I do the same thing, if I get louder, if you notice when you get pissed off and you start yelling, it's harder to think, right? When you actually get pissed off at something, it's harder to think. It's harder to think logically about something when you're pissed off. And so volume replaces substance. Regression under stress is a documented psychological response, right? So when you're under a stressful situation and you feel attacked, or you feel like your identity is being attacked, right? It is a documented psychological response. It is a normal psychological response that emotional regression happens when you're under stress, because when fight or flight comes in, right, that's reptilian, right? That's the reptilian brain, right? No, I'm not saying that we're fucking reptiles or that there's, reptilian aliens, for fuck's sake. I'm just going to get that one out there, right? So when I say reptilian, I'm talking about kind of like, the back of the fucking brain, the instinctual part of the brain. So when the fight or flight kicks in, right, it is usually where kind of like you as a human being, your frontal lobe processing really needs to kick in, because when you are under stress, it is normal to kind of have that emotional regression. And unfortunately, in insecure people, tantrums feel powerful. Throwing a temper tantrum feels powerful. It feels powerful when people start kicking and screaming on the floor because they don't have any power anywhere else in their lives, right? Or, they feel like they're losing control. So what do is they start to cry and kick and scream, and they're that kid in the grocery store that wants to buy a toy, but their parents said no, and now they need to take back some of that power and some of that control, and the only way they know how to do that is to start freaking out on the floor, right? They're throwing a temper tantrum, right? And, the false belief that aggression equals strength. When you start coming at people with threats or insults or something like that, you feel strong, right? When you begin to critique someone on a topic, and your critique has nothing to do with the actual topic, and you are critiquing how they look, how they sound, you are already showing that you have nothing. You've just proven it. You've proven you have nothing, right? It's one of the reasons it's the whole concept of like the Nazi argument, right? Like, when someone disagrees with you, and they call you a Nazi because they disagree with you, but they don't have a way to actually, back up what they're saying. So what do? They just call you a Nazi. They call you a bigot. They call you, whatever the case may be, right? Whatever they got at the tip of their tongue, they just start hurling it at you, right? Why? Because they don't have an argument, because they don't actually have something to say. So they want to try to take that power back, right? So they become aggressive, they get louder, right? And they start repeating the same things over and over again because they don't have an argument. They don't have a way to actually stand their own ground and back up their own beliefs, right? And so instead of having a conversation, they fall into emotional regression. They start hurling insults, right? And yeah, that's it. So yeah, the power that requires emotional collapse to defend it was never power. Take place of facts when they have nothing to say that is real or correct. Exactly, right? And so for sources for this, like, is Ledoux, the emotional brain, okay, amygdala hijack, and Van der Kolk, the body keeps the score, right? Stress response and regulation failure. Ego validation and the audience trap. Okay, so many public meltdowns are not belief; they're about being seen, right? So a lot of the time, what happens, in certain situations, especially online, people may disagree with you with something that you're saying or something that you're presenting. But what comes down to it is they see an opportunity to piggyback and grow off of, your opinion by disagreeing with you publicly and having a temper tantrum publicly, right? So they try to take a moral standpoint, right? Which if I felt like honestly getting into the specifics of the subject, like on morality, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. But I think it's funny, right? Because the position, the moral position here, is kind of an obvious one, I would think. But you know, um, and let's just say the counterparty doesn't necessarily have a full stock of that. But anyway, usually what'll happen is people try to take a moral positioning, and then in that moral positioning, right, use the concept as a springboard to try to create kind of like a whirlwind effect with said argument to get people to back them up, and then boast their ego, and then kind of have more visuals on them, right, to be seen, right? So, and that's what it kind of breaks down to, right? Is it's not about the actual belief; it's about being seen, right? So if I feel like disagreeing with XYZ for whatever reason is going to get attention on me, then I want to get attention, right? And I'm going to get attention. And I will say this, and I will say this publicly. The situation that shouldn't be happening, but is, the individuals in question have been removed from commenting on my channel for the time being. I'm very much of the air that if you want to have a conversation with me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. I will have a conversation with you, whether that be live. I would prefer it to be live because then it's documented, and the details of it are documented. But if it's in private, it's also in private. I have no problem having a discussion. But if you are going to come to my slice of the internet and you are going to criticize me, you are going to talk down to me, you are going to threaten me, you are going to, do any number of these things, I do not and will not tolerate it or deal with it. Now, I've always been known to be able to have a conversation with people. There are people talking behind my back. There are people, saying this and that, and I really don't give a shit. I don't care. Go ahead, do your thing, have fun, knock yourself out. You want to have a discussion? Let's have a discussion. You don't want to have a discussion and you want to try to do it in the comment section? Not on my channel. Yes, love. So I'm not going to tolerate it, right? I'm just not going to tolerate it. I'm not. And I'm not going to name you because honestly, with the behavior that I've been seeing, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to me to put the time and energy into putting a name to this situation, because it shouldn't be a situation. We're all adults and we should be acting like adults, right? Regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with any of my opinions, regardless of what the opinion is, right? And, it's that simple. It's that simple, right? So if you find that you're trying to leave comments, or even if you're in the chat, you're trying to leave a message and you can't, that's why. So yes, I did remove you, not because I'm censoring you. I'm not. I'm not censoring you, right? I'm protecting my peace. Because I really don't feel like seeing the ridiculousness that is being portrayed on my channel from immature individuals that are incapable of having a conversation. Like, because let's put it this way. In this situation, there are two people that came at me. One came at me with, a clearer head and asked a question, though, albeit maybe a sarcastic question, but still asked a question. And I responded to that question in kind, and with respect and with clarification. And then somebody else that should probably lay off the crack pipe came at me, with aggression. And I also responded in kind. Both people, I will say though, and I wasn't being sarcastic, I said, come on the show and talk to me. One said yes, and the other one said that they had no interest and that they had no respect for me. And so it's like, okay. And I left it there. And now a third individual is getting involved, which is connected to the second. And that's where I kind of drew the line. I was like, you know what? I'm just kind of fed up with this. This is childish behavior, right? This is very childish behavior, and I'm not going to. Mr. Something else. If you're asking if I removed you from my channel to send messages, everyone can see you, and as far as I'm aware, you were not involved in this, this little tissy that happened on the channel. So I know, no, you're not banned. Everyone can see you. So with that, I was just kind of like, okay, this I'm done. I'm not going to pay attention to this. And it's not censorship, because there's nothing worth seeing being said, right? And like I said, anyone that wants to have a conversation, I'm going to repeat this again, okay? If you want to have a conversation, if you want to talk about something, if you disagree with something that I believe in, or something that, I think, come on the show. You are more than welcome. Shoot me an email, whatever. Hey, I disagreed with what you said, and this is boom, 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 boom. These are why. Can we talk about it? 100%. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's have that conversation. But if you're going to act like a kid, right? You're going to act like a child. I'm not going to entertain it. I'm not going to do it. I have more important shit to do in my life than deal with children on the internet. Like, I really do. I honestly, I am so fed up how the internet perpetuates this ridiculous idea of a high school mentality. It is unbelievably fucking irritating, right? I'm not into your clicks. I don't give a shit about your clicks. I don't give a shit who you think is popular, who's this, who's that. I don't fucking care. I don't care. I never have. I never will. Right. This isn't a popularity contest. Right. Something that was said or something that was brought to my attention is people think that, oh, like I'm trying to be like Occult famous or some shit. And I was like, if I was trying, if I was trying to be Occult famous, right, I wouldn't say half of the shit that I say. I wouldn't call out half of the shit that I call out, because half of the shit that I call out pisses off half of you motherfuckers. Like, half you motherfuckers can't stand me. Right? Half y'all motherfuckers don't like me. Right? Some of you don't like me because I call myself a conservative. Right? Some of y'all fucking, got the fuck out of Dodge because of that. Right? Some of y'all don't like me because I call out the whole fucking God spousing thing, right? Like, y'all fucking flip shit on that one, right? So if I'm trying to be internet famous in the occult space, I wouldn't be saying half of the shit that I say, because half of the shit that I say makes half y'all motherfuckers fucking hate me. I don't give a fuck if you hate me. Go ahead. Have fun. You're the one wasting energy on it, not me. I'm saying what I think. And I will always say what I think. Now, am I open to changing my mind? Yeah, I am. Sad world. Holy shit. What's up, man? Been a minute. Welcome back. For those that don't know, Sad World is a longtime viewer of the channel. Haven't seen him or Aaron in a few months. I hope you guys are okay. Hope you guys are doing good. You know, hope everything's all right. You know, so just keep that in mind, right? Because here's the thing, right? I say things that piss people off on kind of like the middle ground, right? I say things that piss people off that are on like what's considered the extreme side of things on both sides. I'm just me. I don't water down my shit, right? Like it's full fucking transparency, right? That's just who I am. That's who I'll always be. Rock on, man. Rock on. Well, congratulations for being in recovery. So, yeah. So to that effect, of people that believe that like I'm just trying to be famous or I'm trying to stir the pot or something, like people think I'm trying to stir the pot because I piss them off. And like, again, if you're pissed off about something I said, that's on you. That's not on me. Right? If you are so emotionally weak that an opinion from someone else is going to cause you to pop off and act like an idiot, how is that my problem? How is that my fault? It's not. Right? If you're blaming me for your behavior, that is the most anti-left-hand path thing you can fucking do. Because guess what? Left-hand path, it's a philosophy. It's not spirituality. It's an overlay. Left-hand path is accountability. It's responsibility. And guess what you're showing? None of it. Just, you know, an idea, right? Anyway, so conflict becomes performance in these situations, okay? That's what happens, right? So you create a conflict and you jump into the conflict and you take an emotional standpoint on the conflict and it becomes performative, right? You act more pissed off than you actually are, right? And you even build yourself up to being that pissed off about something you probably shouldn't be that pissed off about because you feel like you need to fit a certain container, right? And social media, it's the amplifier of insecurity, right? When you come at me the way that or at anyone in the way that we're talking about this morning, the only thing that is shown is your own insecurities. That's it. How insecure you are and what you think and what you believe. And also, by the way, like, I'm not addressing the situation specifically, you know. It is to most people. It is to most people. But I do draw a distinction between conservative and Republican. I'm not Republican. Like, I know that most people use those terms interchangeably. And I feel like Republican is something else. You know, so there are very specific things that I believe in that I feel makes me, I suppose, like the classic term for it would be classic liberal, but like even that doesn't really fit anymore. So I suppose, you know, the most appropriate standpoint to take on it would be conservative. But I do, again, I will reiterate, I draw a distinction between, you know, conservatism and Republican. First and foremost, I mean, obviously Republican is, you know, a political party, but usually identifies as conservative, right? It's Republicans are a conservative party. But I feel like there's something, there's an extra with Republicans that I don't have, that I don't hold. And so I don't identify with that. And if I did, I would say so. But I don't identify with Republican, but I do say that I'm conservative. Because I think the idea of what conservative is has probably changed. Because if you look at conservative back in the 90s, you know, like conservatism in the 90s was fucking disgusting. And I grew up in the 90s, right? I mean, I openly identified, you know, as, you know, a liberal, you know, throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. You know, but, you know, with recent things and stuff like that, I feel like I do more align, you know, conservatively, not, I wouldn't say politically per se, but, you know, something along those lines. Because, you know, I do agree with the idea of having a conversation and things like that. I don't want to be getting into screaming matches, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it just kind of is what it is. But I don't believe that my beliefs should be anyone else's beliefs. I'm not going to push my beliefs on anyone else. Most of my beliefs within that are between Dyer and I. You know, I'm with someone that, you know, shares my beliefs, and, you know, we agree with each other, and that's all I need. I don't need the rest of the world to agree with me with certain things, and therefore I don't have those conversations because I don't see a need to. So, you know, yeah, I mean, I don't care what political affiliation or alignment anyone has, because we're not here for that, right? We have something I feel that's significantly more important that, you know, binds us together as a community. So yeah, so public outrage is a bid for relevance, right? So when you become outraged publicly about something and you start yelling and screaming, you know, to the tops of the roofs about your opinion, right? You know, it's, you know, it's you're asking for relevance. Exactly, Kesra. I appreciate the understanding. Thank you. So, you know, with public outrage, you know, it's a bid for relevance, and you see it in anyone. When anyone comes off the cuff, you know, doing something specific just to piss people off, or, you know, just to get attention, like you're pissed off by something, you want everyone else in the world to be pissed off with you. You want to be relevant. You feel like you need to be relevant, right? And in my opinion, serious practitioners avoid comment wars, right? Like if you're really serious about like what you're doing and stuff like that, like once you see a conversation completely falling apart, you step out of it, which is what I've done, right? And, you know, because obviously, you know, it's in my comment section, I had the afforded ability to completely remove any other future irritants from coming forth. But like, I think serious practitioners not only avoid comment wars, but invite conversation, right? It's like, well, I want to know why you think this. Can we please have a conversation? Can we learn from each other here? Because I don't agree with you. Can we have a conversation about this? That's the appropriate response. That should be the appropriate response. Can we have a conversation? Can we talk to each other, right? Can we learn from each other? Can we find a common ground, right? That's an appropriate response. I didn't call anyone out specifically in, you know, anything that I said. You know, I made a very general statement about my opinion on something, which was very intentional. And I've said this multiple times, that it was intentional that I removed the nuance from my statement, right? And I got exactly what I thought I was going to get. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, with what I had said, with what everything that's happening, I got exactly what I knew was going to happen, right? I didn't know who was going to do it, but I knew someone was. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, I find it rather hilarious that human beings can be so predictable, right? So if you're looking for sources for what we're going through, is Peterson. We can look at maps of meaning. So chaos response and identity threat. Plato, Republic disorder, and the soul mirrors disorder of the city. So, and I've said this a million times, if your magic needs witnesses to work, it's theater. It's that, that's it. And discipline in actual occult practice. Historically, occult systems prioritize silence, restraint, and testing. Right? And silence isn't just about protection of persecution. We talked about this, I believe, on Apocrypha, or even with the Gentleman Occultist. The silence is because, psychologically speaking, when you start talking about the things that you want to do, it has the same chemical reaction in the brain as if you actually accomplish it, right? So if you're constantly in a battle of, I want to do this, but then I'm incapable of doing it, try not talking about it, right? Try not discussing it, because when you talk about something, you discuss something, right? What happens is your brain will react the same way as if you actually accomplished it, right? You will feel that sense of accomplishment by talking about it. So when we talk about magic, magic requires intention, right? So if you talk about your intention, and if you talk about what you want to kind of come through, when you actually do the work, that energy is actually lessened because you talked about it. So silence has a multifaceted place inside of the occult, inside of attention, inside of practice. Restraint and testing is, show restraint, show control, show temperance, right? And then test, do the work, do the testing, right? Emotional control is foundational. It's not optional, right? If you can't control your emotions, right, when you disagree with someone, then what's the point, right? I mean, what's the point? And I think one of the biggest kind of names to talk about emotional control is Crowley. Crowley, spoke about, emotional control and magical failure. If you fail in emotional control, you fail magically, right? If you can't control your reactions and your comments and things like that, right? Then you're not going to be able to control your magic, and more than likely it'll fail, right? And then Michael Ford on self-deification requiring responsibility, not tantrums. Even Michael Ford has talked about this, right? That, self-deification, the full control of self, that radical accountability, that radical responsibility. Self-deification requires radical responsibility, not tantrums, right? And threat-based behavior signals towards a lack of internal authority. If you're threatening other people to try to posture, or try to assert dominance through threats, then you are only showing that you lack internal authority. If you can't control yourself, what are you going to do to me? Right? And if you're wondering the sources, you can look at Crowley, Magic Without Tears, Emotional Excess as Magical Error, and Ford, Apotheosis, Sovereignty Through Discipline, right? The work does not excuse you from adulthood, okay? And the last thing I want to talk about, sovereignty includes regulation, okay? So the left-hand path demands more responsibility, not less. That's the reason why we talk about the left-hand path so much, because the left-hand path requires you to have accountability and responsibility for yourself, not others. Your reactions, to sit there and react to someone or something, to blame someone else for what you're saying or what you're doing, is the complete opposite of what the left-hand path as a philosophy teaches us. It is the complete opposite. You cannot claim left-hand path as your path and behave in such a way that blatantly shows that you take no accountability for your shit. Question, you have a question. Shoot. I will continue, and when I'm done, if I have an answer, I will give it to you. And if I don't, I will tell you that I don't. Right? So, emotional regulation is self-mastery in action, right? Being able to control your responses, your reactions, things like that. Like proving that you can be non-reactive and regulated in a situation that is stressful. That's left-hand path. Because your behavior isn't because of someone else, right? Isn't because of someone else. It is because of your lack of ability to control yourself. You're the one making the decision, the choice to perform an action. And you need to take responsibility for that action. To sit there and say, well, I'm doing this because you said or you did. You're blaming an external force for your behavior. Right? That's not it. What are you, am I missing something in the conversation? Who's ordering what and what? I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. Excuse me. Accountability for words, tone, and behavior is, again, part of personal accountability, radical accountability. That is the left-hand path, right? You take full accountability for the shit your inner chaos demon pulls. You know, rock on, rock on. Like, I mean, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't, right? Right? Nobody makes me say the shit that I say it, right? Can I be wrong? Yeah, I can be wrong. I'm human, right? Like, people also have this obsession that everybody, like for someone to, like, you know, like that comes out the way that we do, right? Whether, you know, my wife Dyra, myself, you know, whoever, that we need to be right all the time. Right? It's a learning experience. Nobody knows fucking everything. Can I be wrong? Yeah, of course I can be wrong. Am I responsible for the shit that I say? Yeah, I'm responsible for the shit that I say. I'm accountable to it. Right? But don't sit there and say that you're acting the way that you're acting because someone said something that you didn't like. They didn't make you do anything. You made a choice to do that shit. That was your choice. That was your decision. Right? You know, so if you're going to say that your left-hand path, actually fucking, you know, do it. Show it. Right? It's just my opinion, but I know it's full of spiteful dark spirits. In control of themselves. Makes no sense to me. Bye. Okay, cool. I have no idea what the hell's going on. All right. No fucking clue. Right. So why sovereignty collapses without restraint. If you can't control yourself and you can't think, right? Self-sovereignty is about holding things into yourself, processing those things, and thinking of an intelligent way to kind of express or outwardly kind of push your things, right? If you don't have restraint, right, your sovereignty over yourself, it does collapse. Because sovereignty, your sovereignty, is something that you need to hold to self. You need to hold that shit close to the chest, right? And if you don't, and you're constantly, you know, in bickering matches and things like that, then, you know, your sovereignty will begin to collapse. And community decay when tantrums are tolerated, right? So this is another thing. When you tolerate, as a, you know, somebody that builds a community, as somebody that has a community, if I were to tolerate tantrums, if I were to tolerate negative behavior, if I had to tolerate attacks, if I were to tolerate insults, that makes my space not a safe space for the people that are in it, right? Like, and I hate that term safe space, but, you know, to a certain degree, I'm responsible for creating an ambience or, you know, a culture of open conversation. And if I'm going to tolerate people doing the complete opposite of what it is that I'm trying to portray and I'm trying to, you know, create, then, you know, the community begins to kind of collapse from that. And hence my action for removing certain people from being able to comment on the channel. If those people want to have a conversation, if you actually want to have a conversation with me, then let's do it. You don't have to fucking like me to have a conversation with me. Like, if you have a disagreement, you want to lay your side down, then okay, well, let's have a conversation. Like, I'm not going to yell and scream at you, right? I'm not going to attack your character, right? You know, let's talk about the issue at hand. Find a middle ground and then move on. But it's not about that, is it? It's about relevance. It's about being seen. It's about, you know, finding something to stir something up to try to garner recognition is what it's about. Again, we can look at Aristotle here. Mastery of self precedes mastery of action, and Jung, the two essays, integration versus possession, right? You don't get to preach sovereignty while acting unregulated. So yeah, that was today's show. I hope you guys, you know, enjoyed, today's show. Yeah, it's just something I'm kind of irritated with is, you know, just childish behavior overall, right? It's not a fun thing. You know, seeing people act like we're still in high school, it's rather depressing to see it. But anyway, thank you all for being here. You guys are fucking amazing. And as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.